Right. Good night again to those of you who are viewing us. We are here live with you again on our World Changers page, and we trust that you will join us. Those of you who are listening, again, we always ask that you send this link for other persons that you know connected to, so that they can share with us and be a part of this interesting discussion. We continue our conversation tonight dealing with the issue of depression and suicide. And I'm glad to have with me two of my young daughters, if I should so call them, who will spend the time with me tonight. And they will share their experiences, their thoughts, their knowledge in specific areas as they will be allowed to tonight. And so we thank you again, as I said, for joining us. World Changers Assembly. And we ask that you have a question. Feel free to text that question in so that we can respond to you. If we can't give you an answer at this time, we promise you we will certainly do the necessary check and research and get back to you. But feel free to ask questions if you do have them. Text those questions in. You can call, there are numbers you can call. You will see on our Facebook page, feel free to call and you inquire. But we started last week talking about, as I said, depression and suicide, because we realized that in our society, it is a subject that sometimes not everybody wants to speak about, and then sometimes those who would speak about it might speak in a particular vacuum. And while there are a whole lot of people might be struggling and going through this experience all by themselves, and some persons may not know what might be happening to a good friend or some relative that they have around them, who they may suddenly find displaying certain behaviors and so on that they've not been accustomed with. And they may think all kinds of different things, not understanding that what they're struggling with is something that is very real, that needs urgent and immediate attention. And so we'll talk about that subject tonight. And we, as I said, we look in our world as well. And the statistics are out there showing that in this present 21st century that we've stepped into, that suicide and depression is on the increase. And you will realize that because of the pressure that's in our world today, the pressure from just living, pressure in so many different areas, family challenges, personal challenges, health conditions, problems as it relates to even areas in which persons are seeking to advance their learning, all kinds of different things. And the pressure of just living can present itself to so many people, and some find themselves not being able to deal with the challenge that presents itself to them, and some find go through depression. Some even get to the point where they're feeling, hearing thoughts of suicide and so on. Last week we spent a while talking about depression. This week we would like to spend some time talking a bit more about suicide, as we do understand that there's a close relationship between depression and suicide. And interesting discussion, as I said tonight. So I'm trusting that all those of you who are listening, please keep your whatever device that you're using, keep it on, and please share with us. We appreciate your time and your company at this moment. So I have with me, as I said, as I should introduce my guest, I have with me two young daughters from our company at Mafeking, and one is Sister Naomi Mitchell, a doctor by profession at this time. And so welcome, Sister Naomi. I'm glad to good to have you here.
Good to be here. Good night.
Yes. And I have also with me another young daughter, Sister Diana Prasad. And she is one who would have studied in the area of sociology, and so she'll be able to share with you concerning depression, suicide from a sociological perspective. And so welcome, Sister Diana.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And so we delve right into a subject tonight as we talk about, as I said, the subject of depression and suicide. And these two young ladies have so chosen to come and spend this time with me. Glad to have them, and I trust that you will appreciate the content and that which they will share with you tonight, because there's a lot of experiences that they would have been exposed to as it relates to this particular experience, and some things they may have observed, just like myself. And you look at the society and you would see so many things that manifest itself in our society in this day. Persons around us would have committed suicide. We've had friends who committed suicide. We've had, in some cases, family members. I, in my own experience, have had a family member who would have attempted suicide. I, in my time growing up as a young man, saw what transpired a couple of weeks ago in our society, the whole experience of murder-suicide. I would have had the unfortunate experience of looking at that, and it has been all around us. And so when things of that nature happen, it has sometimes a traumatic effect on persons or people. Some people, the difficulty of dealing with that, some of them find it hard to treat with that. But let me say to you, this is the society, this is the real world that we're living in. And things are happening around us, and we have to be aware, and of course you have to have a sense of strength, should I say. And one of the things that we always encourage persons, of course, from this platform, is very vital that one have a strong, good relationship with God, so that in all of life's challenges you are able to contend with them and navigate your way through this life, not all by yourself, with God on your side. So we talk about, as I said, depression and suicide. And then last week we dealt with types of depression. And tonight I will ask our doctor here to just take us through again some of the thoughts that she may have with respect to depression and certain symptoms. And she will share with us her thoughts as it relates to depression. So let's appreciate and welcome Sister Naomi as she expresses some thoughts and share her ideas with us tonight. To you, my dear.
Thank you. Good night, everyone. So last week, Pastor would have talked, I've basically given you a lot of information on depression. I'm just here to reiterate or maybe add in a little. So depression falls under, in psychiatry, it falls under a bracket of a mood disorder. And a mood disorder is when a person has abnormal mood changes or abnormal emotions, and at the same time they feel as though they are unable to control them. So it's like their mood shifts and they themselves feel like they have no control over their emotions. So depressive disorder falls under a mood disorder. And depression is when you have a period of abnormal sadness. And when I say abnormal sadness, I mean that this affects your social and occupational functioning. Like, it makes you no longer able to function well in society. It disrupts everything in your life. And I want to just clarify that you have something called a depressive episode, and that is where Pastor would have highlighted these symptoms last week. And that is where you would have, to criteria to diagnose it, we say that you have 5 of those of the 9 symptoms, and including 2 which would be sadness and anhedonia, which is we call lack of pleasure. You don't find pleasure in things that you would have found pleasurable before, and you would have had it to 2 weeks, and that would have been a depressive episode. Now, going on to major depressive disorder, that is where now you would have had a period of depressive episodes for a lengthier time, longer than 2 weeks. Pastor would have mentioned the symptoms last week. it would have been depressed mood, sleep disturbance. And when we say sleep disturbance, it's not just that you're unable to sleep, is that you have difficulty falling asleep, you have difficulty staying asleep, and you have difficulty waking up in the morning. Like I said before, anhedonia, so you no longer enjoy the things that you enjoyed or found pleasurable before. Feelings of wordlessness and disproportionate guilt. You have fatigue and loss of energy. You have diminished concentration. And something too that a lot of persons might not have known is that sometimes you move slow, so it affects, it causes retardation in your body movement. So it's like you're moving slower than usual. Not just a lack of energy, but you yourself is like, people could notice it. You also have weight changes, and also strongly associated with depression is suicidal ideations. The psychiatric disorder greatly associated with depression. Something that I wanted to make mention of in terms of the causes of depression, I wanted to let people know that depression is multifactorial, meaning that it's not just things in your environment, stressful situations that would cause somebody to have depression. Depression is also a result of brain function. So people have neurotransmitters in their brain, and all of that affects happiness, sadness, everything working together. And in persons with depression, studies have found that they have a lack of these neurotransmitters. So I'm saying this to say that sometimes we might see persons out there in the community and they would tell us that they're suffering from depression or they're constantly sad, and we would look and think to ourselves, why are you sad though? Like, you have all these things going for you. It's not just about the stressful situations or the traumatic events, but it's also a biological effect as well.
Let me just ask you on that note, and I think I love you putting that there, because we would usually think that it is many times that persons or people are depressed because of something that they would have gone through, some, as you said, traumatic experience. But you seem to be saying to us that there are additional things, as you're highlighting there as well.
Yes. So just like I highlighted before, a lot of the times, stressful situations, traumatic experiences, all of these things can cause, and as we see, they will cause depression, but they aren't the only things. And I just want people to be able to sympathize with others that you can have $1 million and you can still be depressed. You can be the most well-known on social media and you can still be depressed. It's not just environment or your socioeconomic status.
Before you proceed, just this week I was hearing even that same thing that you said there, with respect to persons who are wealthy, and they're doing well in terms of financially in their life and so on. We call it, they're successful. But it is understood that a lot of persons who are in that bracket are also going through depression. So, as you rightly say, it seems we have to understand, therefore, that it's really not always, sometimes because of the stress of living in itself. Sometimes it could be, as you say, other things that is contributing towards a person's depressed state.
Yes. And lastly, also genetic factors also play a part in it. So if it is you have a first-degree relative, meaning your mother, your father, your brother, if they have been diagnosed with clinical depression, then you also have a risk of having depression as well. So there's also a genetic factor to it as well.
Could I ask you if you may be able to take us into that? I don't know. I know all the answers we would have, but I'm asking this question. As you said, there's also a genetic factor to it. So it is very possible that persons who are coming out of a family where there is a trend somewhat of that they are most likely to find themselves treated with that kind of scenario? Or is it possible that persons who don't have that kind of background as well may also be less likely to go through that kind of experience? Trying to understand if who's going to become more prone to that kind of experience of depression, as it were? Is it the person who comes from the family where there is that strength already, or the person who may not be coming from that?
Okay, I feel like this is a bit tricky, but
yeah.
To answer it best, and I'm going to be as cautious as possible.
Mm-hmm.
If it is you have a family history of depression, if it is you have a family history of any psychiatric disease, you yourself are at an increased risk of having that psychiatric disease. And I would say that you're of a higher risk than others in society, but that doesn't take away their risk of developing, because anyone can develop depression, as we've seen, and it can stem from the environment, it can stem from stressors and such. So I would actually say that if you have a family history, then yes, you are more at risk. But just because you are more at risk, that doesn't mean that you are most definitely going to get or develop depression, right? And so I feel like that kind of answers the question.
Yes. But that was one of the thoughts that I had as well, because I was going to ask you. And so you answered me right there on the
and also to add, statistically, WHO also says that females are affected more than males in depression. And you see the age of onset, they say more so in the third decade of life, but you're also seeing an increase in depression between the younger age groups, between 15 to 29 years of age. So I feel like, yes, it's more common among those who are older, but you're also seeing where now younger persons are developing it.
But may I ask, if possible, you should give this, what do you think is contributing now to younger persons developing depression, as against, should I say, earlier? Why do you think that we are seeing now younger persons becoming more prone to depression and stuff like that? Has research shown us exactly why that is happening and such?
I'm going to be very frank. Life is hard.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that because you're young, you have the world going for you, but you're here, you're in school, you're in high school, you're in university, you're now starting off a job, you are in a competitive world where you're continuously competing with your peers, and again, the genetics comes into play, but not this society, this is me speaking, I feel like it's a lot harder now for young people than I say it would have been before, because you have so many things now that you're competing against, that you're seeing, and life is hard.
The challenge of living. Yeah, I would understand that. You're quite true. And I could just only speak from observation, of course, on some of the things that I may have had to treat it from a pastoral perspective. And certainly I do understand that life is a lot more challenging now than it used to be years ago. I sat with some older guys not too long, and some of them were just reflecting on, how life used to be. We did not have all of these great things going for us. In terms of all the amenities we have now, technology and all, we didn't have all of those things. But there was a sense of, there was less stress on us. As against now, the stress to achieve, as you rightly said, the stress to just go to school and acquire and get things, and that stress is very difficult for older people. And of course, some people are falling through and finding it difficult to treat with those challenges and stresses. But let me talk to you, Sister Diana, and while she would share with us and show us some, give us some medical perspective from a social experience. What are your thoughts as it relates to the whole experience of depression and that moves people into suicide and so on? What are some of the thoughts that things that you would like to share with us at this point in time?
Good night, everyone, again. So, from a sociological perspective and more so psychological perspective, we would see from various disciplines there are different perspectives. as we would have heard with Naomi's medical perspective and so on. And as she rightfully said, there is a strong link between suicide and depression. There is a strong link. And reason being, there is a lot of different perspectives as we could look into. If you allow me to go via the sociological perspective, we will look at the work of Durkheim. And from that perspective, or functionalist perspective, he would say that suicide is a cause of lack of disorganization, social disorganization, a lack of social integration, social solidarity, and all of these things. Now, in the work of Durkheim himself with suicide, he would have identified 4 types of suicide. Don't get frightened by the big words, but so we have one would be egoistic suicide. And he would have said that egoistic suicide is a lack of social integration. So basically that is saying is that when persons feel like they don't fit into society, they don't have a place, they don't have a purpose, they don't feel integrated into society, that is one of the reasons of suicide.
So are you saying it affects their sense of esteem of self?
Definitely, yes, their social well-being, right? So that would be egoistic suicide. Then there will be altruistic suicide. And that is when there is altruistic suicide.
Altruistic.
Suicide, yes. And with this type
break that down for us.
Yes, definitely. Altruistic suicide is when there is too much integration, or there is a strong sense of integration. So for example, when you feel so strongly attached to a particular group, you don't mind sacrificing yourself. So one example I'd give is the hijackers with the World Trade Organization. They didn't mind to kill themselves when they hijacked to kill the stuff, right? So that would be altruistic suicide, that they have strong values and connections to this particular group. Then there is anomic suicide, and that one is a lack of social regulation. So that is when there comes a high stress levels and frustrations and so on, and persons, it hits them suddenly that they can't cope with it. So for example, all of a sudden you get a financial attack and you can't seem to come out of it, and then you seemingly go via that perspective, which is anomic. And then the last one would be fatalistic suicide. And that is basically when persons have high expectations from you and you don't meet that expectation. So you'd see celebrities and so on when you look up to them, and then they have the world, as Naomi rightfully said, you have the world of money, you are wealthy, you live in the life basically, yet you are unhappy, yet you are sad and frustrated, and you commit suicide. So those are the 4 types. If you wish for me to refresh that, would be egoistic.
Before you go on, we would have seen the last one you mentioned. I believe we would have seen some of that manifesting itself. I recall, I'm not too sure what is his reasons, but of course from our perspective, this gentleman, I think it is Bourdain, who used to be there on CNN, going around the world checking out, and he committed suicide. And of course, maybe, as you were saying, probably the demand and the expectations, he felt that he could not have, or maybe, I don't know what was happening in the background, but we have seen a whole lot of persons who we deem successful. They're committing suicide, and it's very unfortunate, but I'm loving it, so let's keep going.
Definitely. So it would be egoistic, altruistic, anomic, and fatalistic. That would be the 4 types that Durkheim would have looked at from a sociological perspective. And as he said, that he sees it from the perspective of social integration, lack of social integration, lack of social solidarity, and disorganization in society. Now, with all these things, all these factors playing, we see Durkheim have more of a social control. Therefore, he wouldn't go against the psychologist's perspective, or he don't look at that perspective. Now, as I said before, there is a direct link with suicide and depression. And the reason being is that depression usually leads to suicide in most cases. Last week, you all would have touched on various types of suicide, and 2 of the most depressions. And 2 most important ones there would have stood out would be persistent depression, and then you would have major depression. Now, even under these depressions, we recognize, so for example, with persistent depression, It's basically you experiencing this almost daily, this low, sad feeling daily for a period of 2 years before you could actually be diagnosed. Now, disclaimer, I cannot diagnose anybody, right? And with that, you have to be feeling that for 2 years. And then with the major depressive depression, that one is more of an acute, so it's a time-limited span. You can't feel it more than once. You can have more than one episode of it. However, you cannot have symptoms of persistent depression, right? Now, even with these depressions, you will go into bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and cyclotomic depression, right? As Naomi would have said when we were speaking earlier, some of these terms are not what we would experience often. So we'd often use the term bipolar and make a joke and be like, hey, what happened? Your mood swings on in bipolar, which is now often wrong, right? The difference is bipolar 1 is where you would experience some manic episodes. So when we deal with manic, we talk about highs and lows, mostly high behavior, abnormal behavior. You would see extreme behaviors and circumstances, right? With bipolar 2, you are really experiencing depressive syndrome symptoms and hypermanic, which is a less severe than manic episodes. Now, even with bipolar 1 or when experiencing a manic symptoms, you could lead to something called psychosis, right? Psychosis is where basically you go in a loss of reality. So you come out of the world of touch, taste, you see and you're hearing, you're feeling things and it's not there. So that becomes a psychotic nature, and that's what we call psychosis. Now, even if you look at suicide in the Caribbean in itself, research would show a lot of different things. One main factor, well, an article from Bostic in 2019, it showed that Trinidad is actually the third country after Suriname and Guyana with the highest statistics in the region. So that would be the Caribbean region.
That is for depression or suicide?
Suicide.
Suicide. So
yes.
we are the third in this region?
Yes. Okay. So that would be an article published by Bostic in 2019, October month, and that was basically on suicidal tendencies, right? And that was a key point that stood out there. And also another key point that stood out was males usually tend to have a higher suicide rate in the Caribbean. And there is a line that shows, or more so a relationship that shows that East Indian males have a higher tendency to commit these suicides. Most times they turn out to be successful, but as Naomi also said, that there is a percentage of females that also engage in such activity.
Interesting. See why I have these two young ladies with me? I'm learning some stuff when I'm sitting here with them, and I'm loving it. I'm just enjoying. In fact, I could just sit down and allow you all to talk. But as I said, we're treating with a very real experience that is manifesting itself. We feel it for people. We see a number of people going through things and facing all kinds of challenges. In fact, I was chatting with one of my good friends even this week, and he said he was looking at us viewing, he probably viewing us right now. And I recall he himself, when he was going through depression, and he went through that on several occasions, and when he was sharing with me some of the symptoms where you just don't feel yourself, you hate when the day comes, because your mind is thinking, look, I have to spend the next day with this same experience, and then you're angry when the night is coming, because you know the night is coming and there's no sleep, and so life becomes so frustrating. And after a while, when this keeps on going on for a long period of time, you begin to hear these voices, and you get these urges begin saying to you, the only way out of this is to just commit suicide. To just end it all. Because if you die, obviously the mind will seem to think, well, I'm going to be at rest. I will not have to deal with these things every day. But we want to remind you, that is not really where the solution is. The answer, you'll hear these voices saying those things to you, but the answer really is not in suicide. because that's what the enemy wants you to do. I know it's painful, I know it's difficult, and I can tell you I don't know it by personal experience, but I feel for people when they go through things like that, when they have to live their life every day, and it's just a frustrating, hopeless experience. And one of the things that happens with persons or people, sometimes they submit themselves to treatment, and in the initial stage of the treatment, or maybe let's say counseling and things of that nature. So they would go to the counselor when these problems began pressing upon them so strongly. And they would keep going to the counselor, let's say after a month or two. They become frustrated sometimes because they feel that I'm going to counseling and the counselor is supposed to try to help me through this process. But when I leave the counselor's presence, I go back home and these things are constantly happening in my mind. And I am more frustrated. And then the counseling desire, sometimes now the person begin to lose that desire because they feel somehow I'm not really being helped and my circumstances is not getting better actually. And so persons feel hopeless. We live, as you rightly said, Sister Naomi, in a very difficult world. It's a challenging world. It's a painful place. And God knows some of the things that some people go through. I recall some experience that would have happened. There's some young persons as well, male as well as female. Sometimes they go through things. Let's say right now there can be even a male or a female person who might be going through incest in their own home. And they are struggling with that. And the persons that they're supposed to trust, who they're supposed to depend on to protect them, now becomes, should I say, the predator, and is destroying them. And they're dealing with that reality. And sometimes persons might be seeing manifestations, all kinds of different things that they're doing. And they may feel more or less that this child or this person is behaving badly, but they don't understand what they're treating with behind the scene. And sometimes it brings them into that place of depression. I would have probably heard several examples in schools as well, where students may be going through that, and they got to places you may be around them and you see them cutting their wrists because they're frustrated. They know what they have to go back home to, and they don't want to go back home. They're glad to be among their friends, but at the same time they're not comfortable. Their minds are in that place where they're burdened, they're depressed, and suicide seems to be the only way out. And we are saying to you tonight, you might be going through those things. I always say to folks that, we are not responsible for the things that may happen to us, but we are responsible for how we respond to the things that has happened to us. So you may not be responsible, obviously, for some of the negatives that you're going through or you may have gone through. But how you respond is very important. And again, I'm saying to you, because we are fully aware, and we have now heard that in this hemisphere, in this region, Trinidad and Tobago are at the third, in all of this hemisphere area, who's struggling with suicide. Suicide, as I said, is not the answer. It is not going to solve your problem. Because from a biblical perspective, there is a concept of view, a biblical worldview that we present to you, that there is so much more that happens to us after this physical existence. And if you believe suicide is the answer, then obviously you're thinking wrongly. And we're encouraging you tonight, please find somebody. Find someone who you can trust, somebody whom you can rely on, somebody who you have that sense of confidence in, and begin to talk about your situations, your problems, the things that you're dealing with as such. Sister Naomi, should I say Doc? Don't mind me calling you that and such. But you talked earlier, as you said, from a medical perspective, and I know in this particular field, you all may have you seen or observed persons who may have gone through that experience of suicide or attempted suicide and came into, should I say, the hospital, or should I say the institution, or have you known persons who have gone into the institution? And at that point in time, what are the attitude and the actions that you may have observed coming from this person who may have attempted suicide? Is there a place of regret, or does it? Do they show that sense of delight to go down this path? What kind of attitude you may have seen, if so? Because I know it has not been so long you're in, they are functioning inside that particular institution. But let me ask you, have you seen or observed anything of that nature? And what may have been the attitude of the persons who may have attempted suicide and seeking treatment?
You're saying this to me, and I think there are like one or two persons that come to mind. And it's not, the first one wasn't influenced by depression, but they were more influenced by another psychiatric disorder, which was schizophrenia. And in schizophrenia, persons tend to hear voices talking to them. And a lot of persons would have said that these voices would give them instructions. So the instructions jump in front of them, instructions to kill someone. And so depression is the psychiatric disorder most times associated with suicide, but there are other psychiatric disorders associated with it. And in terms of a person with schizophrenia, they are having psychosis. They're not in touch with reality. So to say, I understand their thought process, and their thought process is haphazard. So I can't really say I understand where their mind is at there, but a lot of them is just that they're hearing voices telling them to do things. And a lot of times these voices, it apart from instructions, it tells you like the things that it says is like self-derogatory things, like condemning you, making you feel worthless, making you feel like you're nothing, you're not even worthy to be on this earth. And constantly hearing that in your mind, you want to end it. You want that relief. You no longer want to hear these voices, and that's one perspective. And the other perspective would have been an individual who did come in and was depressed, and from what I saw, it was just like a lot of hopelessness in that individual. You are at a stage where you just feel worthless. You just feel like life isn't worth living. There's nothing for you anymore. Like, that is what I got. I just got a sense of hopelessness from them. And like you said before, it was, as your friend would have said, that experience where you feel like you want to just end it, end this hopelessness, this worthlessness, you feel guilt-stricken. And so that is what I would have seen. And that is what I would have experienced being in the medical professional, being at school at that time.
Yes, my dear. I believe it's really a critical point in the life of a person to come to that hopeless state where you believe that there is absolutely nothing worth living for. I don't have no sense of reason to look forward to a tomorrow, because there's nothing to look forward to. And while we are talking here tonight, there might be persons who are listening to us who are really feeling hopeless. We don't know all who might be engaged listening to us tonight. Somebody may just be going through, should I say, Facebook. You stumble on this program. I know how it happens at times. And as you got right there, you just hear us talking about hopelessness, feeling lost, feeling depressed, and you hear us talking about these issues. Listen, we are saying to you, you have not connected with this program by guess. We are saying to you tonight that there is hope, but there's hope in only one person. You see, friends around you cannot really give you the kind of hope you're looking for, because persons around you, I grew up and I always remember this experience. I grew up with friends and persons around me, and one gentleman took me, who's still a good friend of mine today, took me to a particular place to steal some oranges from a man's field, and the gentleman who owns the field saw us there on the tree, and he came in there and he started, sharing links for all of us who was there. I was on the high part of the tree, and my friend left me and run. And I cannot forget that, because one of the things I'm saying to you is that when you place your trust in friends and people, I always hear the older folks say, friends does lead you, and they cannot bring you back. And they will leave you right there. So to rely on people and friends is not really where your answer is. I want you to understand that the solution really is in coming into contact with one person. We started here last week with one of our brothers, Brother Addison, who shared with us his experience, where once upon a time in his life he was about to commit suicide. And it was Jesus who brought him out of that experience. An encounter with God right there in that garden area. The Lord reached him there and touched his life. And you just need that encounter tonight, whosoever you are. You need to have. You might be on drugs and you're tired every day. You're going through cocaine addiction, alcoholic addiction, all kinds of addiction you might be going through. And you will have faced those things and you're tired. You become, in some cases, family members might be saying to you, listen, we are at that place where we're tired with you. And they may obviously be, they have reasons to be, but I want you to understand you don't have to stay in that condition. There is a God that we know, who saves, who delivers, who sets free, who can bring you out of hopelessness, who can bring you into a place where you can have peace. And could you just read this? Where you can have peace. And that's a question I think someone will ask, and so we look at it. And so I want to encourage you tonight, please connect with this man, Jesus Christ. He is going to give you the kind of hope and joy and peace. I wake up every single day of my life, and I look forward to every day, because Jesus Christ gives me reason for living. You can wake up every day. And even though I'm saying that because offset, we were speaking earlier, and I was asking, and we were discussing the issue, can Christians also go through depression? And we are saying to you, yes, Christians can go through depression, because we are saying depression is not only something that happens from a spiritual perspective, but depression also has a biological connection to it. And the doctor was sharing with us that connection. I think earlier she was making mention of the fact that some things and imbalances in the brain and things of that nature. Could you share with us those what imbalances that happens in the brain? You talk about neuro. I can't recall all those words, but what constitutes or contributes to depression? Attributes the biological aspect.
Okay, so I was drawing reference to neurotransmitters in the brain. Some of them familiar with, so you have serotonin, adrenaline, noradrenaline, those are, yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, but serotonin is the most one that I know is also associated with it. And I would say it's like a relay. So you have connectors in your brain, and to pass along messages, to pass along emotions, to pass along memories, all these different things. You have these neurotransmitters that are all connected, and when a message is received at one end, they release these neurotransmitters, right? And if it is you have a lack of these neurotransmitters and you don't have enough of these neurotransmitters, then is the message really coming across though? So is that emotion really coming across well? I think that's the best way to put it in layman terms. Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something somewhere along the line of that nature, but you know, I am not a doctor, so I needed to ask and get some clarification. And I'm saying to you that yes, as a Christian, you can encounter things of that nature. And I am aware as well too of some experiences where I understood that some Christians also attempted suicide, and it may sound kind of bad to say that, but and because of the fact that we are saying Christ Jesus is the answer, but we are also saying to you as a Christian, people or persons can face depression. And because when depression comes, it brings you into that kind of experience where you are tempted to commit suicide. And there are Christian persons who would have faced that. But there's a difference for the Christian facing depression as against the person who don't have that relationship with God. When you are faced with depression as a Christian, one of the things that you can always have a guarantee is that there's a God who says, I will never leave you. Whatever state or condition or experiences you face in life, he says, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I believe that that friend that I made mention of, I wouldn't call his name, but if he's looking, he will know very well who I'm talking about. And that friend, I believe the reason why he did not commit suicide, primarily because of his connection with God. If there was not a connection with God, he would have done it a long time. And I'm saying to you, when you know Jesus, it makes a whole lot of difference as against not knowing God. And our question came to us that...
sorry, just to relate, right, I have it written down here. So the neurotransmitters are serotonin, noradrenaline, and dopamine. The question that was brought to me was, to these medical conditions identified, can someone be completely delivered from these through the use of medication? As best to answer the question, I would say that having major depressive disorder, having a psychiatric disorder, it is a chronic illness, in that this is something that you're diagnosed with it and you have it for life. And to say that you would be completely delivered, as in healed, totally disappear, gone, never experience it again, if I had to be honest, the answer to would be no. I believe that with medication and with proper treatment of it, you can get control of it. You can get, just like with your hypertension and your diabetes, with you follow the lifestyle practices, you take your medications, and you follow medical advice, you can get control of your psychiatric condition. So maybe you have fewer depressive episodes, or maybe you go an extended period of time without without having depressive episodes, or without having a psychotic episode. But to say that it would just disappear, no longer exist, no, I would say that you will get control of it. Okay. And you prevent acute episodes of it. That's it.
All right, so let me just interfere with that response you give to a certain extent. And yes, I understand clearly from a medical perspective that and that it would be an honest answer and a response, that no. But let me speak from a Christian, a man of God perspective, kingdom perspective, should I say. And from a kingdom perspective, I am convinced that there's absolutely nothing in this world that a man can go through that the God that I serve cannot totally deliver them from. That is the conviction I have. And if probably I should draw an example, let me look at. There was a gentleman who the Bible says who lived in the tombs. He was living in there. That was his thing. He had to bind him with chains. And then nobody could have kept him quiet. And we will call that man most likely one who probably in that particular capacity. We probably suggest he's like that. Here Jesus comes on the scene. And the Bible says when Jesus comes on the scene, he released that man from that condition. And then he sent him home back to his family. And he went home back to his family, totally whole. I believe that there is a God that we serve who can heal from every condition, any situation. And I appreciate and understand the medical perspective in terms of how we treat with it. Because what I look at in the, usually when persons begin to suffer with depression, one of the things that I am sometimes a little bit amazed about is, I often find sometimes when they began to treat persons with some of the medication, there's sometimes I notice that there's a difference in terms of how the persons function and things of that nature. And I have these little questions there why, and possibly they would tell me, those who serve like area sentence and all of that, they would say the medication has a certain kind of effect on persons who would probably be treated with those things. But I can tell you, when Jesus released that man, he had absolutely no problem. He was totally free. And there is a power available. And that is why we talk about it, because we are presenting it to you. we're presenting to you the medical, the socio-medical perspective. We're presenting these perspectives to you, but we are saying to you that on the bottom line is where medical science would have reached its limit and where sociology and all of those things would have reached its limit, there's a God who is unlimited in power, unlimited in his ability to heal, deliver, to set free. And so yes, that is from a pastoral perspective, I should say, and from a man of God perspective, I'm bringing to you that conviction in my heart that God is able to deliver from anything or any condition. And so that is question asked as such. So my doctor would like to.
So one thing I would just like to add to what Pastor is saying. I as well, being a Christian, I fully believe in the power of God. I believe that God can work all miracles, and I believe that with God there's always that possibility that completely disappear whatever illness, whatever comes on you. But at the same time, I believe that God has equipped us with knowledge, with tools at our fingertips that we can utilize. And I know that a lot of people have this fear or they have this hesitation when it comes to mental illness and assessing help in the medical field. But I don't think that, I'm here to tell you, I don't think that you should be ashamed, and I don't think that you should have any fear. I fully believe that you can trust in God. To me, trusting in God is also you can and you can take counseling in medicine, social approach to treating psychiatric diseases, and the biological part of it would be the medication, and the psychosocial part of it would be like your therapies, and also talking to your pastor, talking to God. All these things falls under the psychosocial aspect of it.
You're loving it, and I appreciate that a lot, because the thing is, we know that the doctor and the medicine has its place, and we're not disbanding medicine because it's very important. I have had to go to the institution, for checks and things of that nature, and I'm saying that it is very important and necessary for us. And God has made, as you rightly said, these institutions available, give people information and knowledge how to correct stuff and to fix things. So we appreciate that. But I just brought in that perspective because I believe that there's a place so far that all of these things will reach. When they say, okay, that's the best we could do, there's a God who says, okay, that's the best you could do, I could now show you how much I could do. So that's just the perspective. Amen. And I know you agree with me. Yes, so Sister Diana, do you have any other thoughts you would like to share with us as it relates to suicide? May you have observed in the experience of suicide, or persons attempting, or understood or saw anybody who would have done it. What are some of the things that you would have felt that that person was feeling? What was going on with them? And, you will share with us some of those things.
Yes, definitely. So, apart from suicide, in the hands of depression looks like this. It looks like this. It looks like the happiest person it could ever be. But at the same time, it could look like really sad. It have different faces, in other words. There are different faces that can be attached to a depressed person. So never, ever, ever believe that the happiest person has it all together. No. Sometimes that's the person who is most depressed at the time. And I can give an example of this. I actually had a friend this month, actually would make it a year since he passed via suicide. The happiest person that you would find, he would be making everyone laugh, he would be looking out for you, he would be passing jokes, and you sure he has it all together. In reality, he didn't. And it's only when he committed the act and he got through with it, we were like, what? So then you become shocked. Suicide does not only look as a depressed person sitting in a corner who doesn't see anything. It doesn't look like that always. Also, there are at-risk factors. Persons who tend to have, would have attempted it before, they are at risk. Persons who have contact with lethal weapons, they are at risk. Persons who engage in consuming a lot of alcohol and a lot of substance abuse stuff, they are at risk. There are a lot of factors, a lot of at-risk factors which contribute to suicide. And depression is just one of them. According to another research, I get to Bostic again, it showed that 5% just was allocated for depression, but rather 75% was due to domestic abuse. So domestic abuse and other abuse also have a factor to play in this. It also shows that a lot of women are abused. We recently had an episode where a woman was killed, and we have a lot of episodes like this. And this alone shows that this is a prominent factor. It is something of concern. It is something that is serious and should be taken serious.
May I ask, you are saying that there's a direct relation sometimes between domestic abuse and depression and suicide?
Definitely, yes. So the thing about domestic abuse, it could also lead to depression. So if you check it, it's like a chain of events, if you want to put it that way. So I am being abused in a home for a lengthy period of time. And within that period, I now start experiencing symptoms of depression. So loss of appetite, insomnia, I can't sleep. I have withdrawal feelings, no longer I am interested in the things that I was once interested with. I am staying away from my friends, my families, I am being alone. I have so many things, my mind is away from everything. I have no interest in anything. Those are symptoms of depression. And then when you get into the state of depression, you realize now that now I'm isolated, I'm away from everyone. And this now puts you in another position where your mind now is at risk, if we want to put it in layman terms. And now I am even easier to commit suicide, because now I'm in a place where, okay, I don't belong here, I'm fed up of this, I've experienced this for too long, I want out, I am fed up. And we always reach a point of fed up. That's when we always get into that act. There's also a feeling of guilt. Guilt is another reason why suicide is triggered. Recently we see most guys who commit acts of murders and so on, they tend to go to kill themselves after, because they know the repercussions. They know they experience feelings of guilt. So it's not only they are heartless human beings, although we know what they commit is gruesome and they should not do so, but these are also other factors that play an interior part. Another thing away from, if I want to say the whole sociological, psychological perspective, is I strongly believe that your mind has a lot to do with the actions that you take. Definitely. Words is a very, very strong aspect of things. Whether you believe it or not, words have a strong impact on people. Be careful of how you use your words. Be careful of how you use your words. A simple encouragement could actually save somebody from committing the act of suicide. And then a simple discouragement or a simple word to bring you down could actually lead somebody to commit suicide. So your words, there is something about when whatever controls your mind controls your behavior. So it's definitely what is up here. If I am in this place where I am thinking that I don't belong, I don't fit in, I have no purpose, I have no value, and these are the words that continuously is being repeated in my mind, then that is how I'm going to feel, that is how I'm going to react to the situation, and then therefore subsequently I'm going to enter a place that I don't want to be. Definitely, right? And one way I found out of this, I would have experienced some sort of discouragement and so on in the past. I would have experienced things like this. So I could speak from a perspective like that. You see, the Word of God is a powerful tool. It is a powerful tool that you can use to change. And you have to remind yourself what God says about you. You have to remind yourself that, listen, I am a chosen one. I'm God's prize. I am everything my Father says I am. And there is nothing you can do about it. So you have to speak words of affirmation back to yourself. Tell yourself how good you are, how beautiful you are. If somebody's speaking the negative, you turn it into the positive. And God is always going to use the negative and turn it around for your good. Another thing is, a lot of person thinks that when we enter this particular phase of depression and suicide, I can deal with it on my own. Sometimes it's never that. There is always an aspect where you need to reach out to someone for help. You need to. There is a point that, yes, I know there is a spiritual aspect, and I totally and I strongly believe that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly and above all. He is able, definitely. But in addition to God putting Him first, seek help. Speak to someone about it. There is no shame, and there is a stigma attached to suicide and depression just as mental health. And that is something that needs to be addressed, definitely. Because when we feel like that, we start thinking, people watch me different. They're gonna bad talk me, or they're gonna tell people about what I'm going through. That kind of thing, you know? Yeah, they will say I'm mad. I walking down the road and be like, hey, she mad and I don't talk to she. And that's the kind of stigma that we have attached to mental health, which should not be, right? So it's definitely, you need to seek some form of clinical help. Also, for persons, and advise to persons who don't experience suicidal thoughts or depressions or so on, check up on your friends. Check up on your happy friends. Get into the heads of persons. Don't just ask them yes and no questions on your message and be like, hey, what you doing? You know, you can message, hey, how you been? How you doing lately? What's going on? Try to get a feel of what is happening in their lives. You need to reach to a point where you can actually have a conversation with be a friend. I'm a friend. You need to be an actual friend to your friend, you know? And those are other ways that we can actually assist. Clinical help, be a listening, lend a listening ear, give words of advice, and not all the time you provide a solution. You create an environment where that person could find a solution as well. So you speak to them in a way that you say, well, this is what you're facing now. But I also know that you should never allow a permanent action to be the reason for a temporary problem. So you go and kill yourself, or you commit suicide because you didn't have the financial requirement, and then boom, God was saying, you could have waited a little longer, somebody was coming to bless you to pay it off. Ding! You know? So it's always different aspects. But suicide is never an option. Depression, I'm not saying as a Christian you'll never feel it. I'm not saying that. We are humans and we will feel different emotions. But as Pastor rightfully said, it's how you choose to react to your situations.
Yes, Diane, and we have had so much to talk about, and I see our time is just right there on us. Yeah, and but the point is, I really, really appreciated the thoughts expressed by these two young ladies. I'm thankful to God for you both. I feel very proud of you both in terms of how you all have articulated and brought forward the perspectives that you all shared with us. And I'm trusting God that our listening audience will have been able to glean on that. I certainly sit here and I learn from you all, and I'm thankful to God for that. And I appreciate it. And we are saying all together that the subject matter that we're dealing with tonight, depression, suicide, it's real. Whether you're saved or not, it's around there. Anybody can find themselves struggling with things of this nature. And you know, we did make mention, as you were saying, how you respond. But you know, as you were sharing with us, Doc, I'm thinking about the persons, because when somebody might be going through depression, a Christian person, let me say, a whole lot of times you're not always in control of what is happening in here. So in terms of how you respond, you that may be such a challenge to persons in that particular time. Do you have any advice as it relates? But I think one of the advice that you did share with us that I really endorse is that doesn't matter who you are, it is always good to seek help. Come to the institution, because the institution does provide that kind of assistance. So that after you have done the necessary things as you highlighted to us, yes, we believe in the social aspect, we believe in the biological aspect in terms of the treatment, and we also believe in the fact that the spiritual dimension is necessary. So all of those three factors will come together to persons who are dealing with the depressive experience. And so, any final thoughts that you would like to leave with us, Doctor, from our social service, and then we would close. Any final thoughts that you would like to leave with us?
So, my final thoughts are also in consideration of what Diana was saying. If it is you have a friend, or if you know someone who you are worried about because you're looking at them and you're seeing that they're exhibiting behaviors of depression or unusual behaviors, they're exhibiting risk factors for suicide. One thing that we were taught is ask that person directly, are you thinking about taking your own life? Are you thinking about committing suicide? And at the same time, to ask them, do you have a plan? Well, not directly, do you have a plan, but you ask them questions to figure out, are they thinking about suicide? And have they already determined how they would do it, how they would go about it, if they have a plan for it? These are important risk factors, because if it is, if it is someone is experiencing something like that, that means that more than likely they are headed down the road of actually committing the act, and they need immediate help, immediate attention. And if you yourself looking at this and I just said that and you thought to yourself, I kind of already had a plan out in my mind, contact someone, speak to someone. There is a, let me get it for you. The Ministry of Health, there's a social services directory. If you go on their website, with multiple institutions that you can contact, that you can go into 24 hours that you can speak to. There's also this page on that I found, the Lifeline TT on Facebook, that you can contact these people. There's also, I believe the church also has their information on their page, World Changers Assembly, where you can contact someone to speak with them. Speak to someone, don't just sit there and have all these emotions. And something else I wanted to make mention, to us who have persons dealing with all of these disorders, especially depressive disorders, where you see them dealing with depressive feelings, understand that I live by this philosophy. All feelings are valid, all emotions are valid. It is not my place to tell someone how they should feel. It is not my place to assess their entire life and then tell them, no, you can't be feeling. All emotions are valid. If someone is coming to speak with you, listen. And don't listen to give advice. Don't listen to try and fix their problems. Just listen and allow them to talk. Okay? Because your role right now is to be a supporter of that individual. And I'm saying this from personal experience. When I was in university, I had a friend, and this person is battling it for years, and there was a certain point where our friend group, we were so worried. Like, I remember one night getting a call and I was thrown into a panic, and I asked that, well, not me, I got another friend, and she asked the question directly, and that's when we found out that yes, this person was thinking about suicide. And later on we found out that they had a plan and such, but they didn't. So thank God for that. But at the end of the day, you have to be that friend, you have to be a supporter, you have to be bold enough to stand by your friends and ask the hard questions, have the hard conversations. And if it is you in your capacity, you know that you can't do that, or you can't be there, you can't be that listener, then you can always direct them where they can. And that is all my closing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, my dear. And it's good sound advice. And Sister Diana, closing thoughts that you want to leave with us at all?
One of them would be to listen to your friend. One way you could identify persons who are experiencing suicidal thoughts and stuff is to actually listen to how they speak. And when you hear they use terms like, I have no purpose, I don't belong here, I think I want out. When you hear they speaking and making plans and stuff like that, just listen to the way that they would speak. By the way they speak, you know what they are thinking. So that is one signal for you to take action, to now identify help for that person. Speak to them, find out what is going on, see how you can help them, give them the best advice you can. And if you think you cannot help with it, refer them to someone else to get help. There is no shame in talking about mental disorders. I repeat, there is no shame in talking about mental disorders. It's only when you seek help, then help can come to you. So suicide is not an option. It shouldn't be an option because God definitely has a plan for you. And when you take your life, that plan can't be established. So definitely I can say to you that you are God's chosen, you are His prized possession, and that God has something marvelous in store for you. So if you are thinking about committing suicide, remember that Jesus loves you.
Amen. Yes. And what a beautiful note for us to close on. And to again remind you, we speak to you on this subject, and we know that many people are dealing with this challenge at this present time. If you find yourself at all in that place, there are some numbers on our Facebook page. Feel free to call them. We are ready, willing, and able to share with you. And as I've been advised, we can refer you if we can't. And certainly you will get help. As we said, suicide is not an option. God cares, He loves you, and He would want to do something special with your life. And we present to you Jesus. He certainly brings peace, joy, satisfaction. Hey, I can sit here tonight and tell you, and spend a whole hour and more telling you how amazing it is to serve God. The kind of joy and peace He gives you, satisfaction He brings in your life. But you can only find out if you connect with Him from your own experience. Make Jesus Christ Lord of your life. Allow Him to rule and govern your heart today, and you will never have any regrets. We are from World Changers Assembly, and we choose to use tonight to share with you these thoughts. We trust that you have been enriched. We trust that we have helped you in some way or the other. And as again I'm saying, feel free to call the number 786-0952, and I'll be glad to have conversation with you to help you in any way possible. God bless everyone tonight. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you again to my two very, very, very good daughters who shared with us. God blessings. Bye for now. Amen.